have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker, licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. It has been so long since we last spoke. It was the Thanksgiving season, so I took that as an opportunity to kind of, reassess. And this is something we like to do this time of year, so we'll have a little chat about that, right? It's the season for giving thanks for the things you're thankful for, assessing how you've done over the last year. We're not going to do the full lessons learned episode of the show yet. I'm going to save that for right around New Year's when we start talking about resolutions, how to manage our plan for the following year. But today I wanted to cover two things. I wanted to cover sort of the whole Thanksgiving thing. And I also wanted to take a minute to talk about risk-taking and areas where you can take risk, where you can leverage off of things you feel like you have a pretty good handle on. Just because right now there are so many different ways to do that. But before we do, let's go ahead and tell everyone how to get in touch with me. It's been so long, you've probably forgotten. The best way is to head on over to the website. Go on to www.therebelbroker.com. From there, you can click on the contact button in the menu bar and send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. If you would like to join the ranks of the Rebel Underground, you can text the word Rebel Broker, the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker, all one word, to the number 44222 on your cell phone. Or if you'd prefer, you can head right on back to therebelbroker.com, click the button that says Join the Rebel Underground, provide the information, and you're in. And of course, totally separate from that, and if you want to join the Rebel Underground and you want to get yourself in the drawing for a $50 Amazon gift card, there's two separate things, right? So what I just described is joining the Rebel Underground. The Rebel Underground is going to, as we move into 2018, present you with some other cool perks. Giveaways, special articles, and videos that aren't going to be part of the regular show. I've kind of put together a cool little, I guess you could call it a menu, so to speak, of items that I plan on incorporating into being the benefits that you get from being a member of the Rebel Underground. Now, separate from that is an effort I've been pushing for a while now. There's a big red button at the tippy top of the website at therebelbroker.com. It's titled Take the Survey to Support the Show. And what that will do is take you to a place where you take a bit of a survey so that I can get less me, more the folks who would potentially advertise on the show can get a better idea of the type of folks who listen to the show. Now, this is you helping me grow the show, because by having that data, being able to say, here's sort of a view of the type of folks who listen to Real Estate Realities, I'm able to better inform folks who would potentially advertise. None of this gets linked with you. I don't give away your information or that kind of stuff. But in order for you to be put on the drawing for the $50 Amazon gift card that we've been doing every month, just go click that button, take the survey to support the show, red button, top of the page. Use the same email address both times you're asked, and then answer that handful of questions, and you're all done. You have done me a huge favor, and you've put yourself in the drawing for that $50 Amazon gift card. And for those of you who've been in the drawing forever and haven't won, you're still in it. I don't flush everybody and only take the folks who did the survey during that month or the previous 30 days before the drawing. So you're just, all of you who are still waiting to win, just keep going. We'll see how long this goes, but we've basically done it every month for the past, has it been a year? I don't even know. I think it must have been, right? In any event, we're up over $600 at this point that we've given away, probably closer to $700 at this point, because it feels like I've been saying $600 for a while now. But in any event, do that, and good luck to those of you who have yet to register or who have registered and haven't been picked yet, and congratulations to those who've managed to win that $50 Amazon gift card. Okay, so let's jump in. We all sort of key off of events, right? And maybe some folks more than others. I tend to be a very introspective guy. Whenever something goes wrong, I'm always looking for how I could have done things differently to prevent the bad thing, or what lessons should I learn, or if I did all the right things or the things that seemed right at the time, what can I learn from those things to potentially better inform future decisions that might be similar? Those types of things. And we'll be discussing that a lot more come the end of the year. But right now is a time to look into your life to figure out what things that you should be thankful for. And I think even if you have had a horrible year, and you know what? This has been a weird year for me. A good example of that. I am thankful for failing to achieve a goal this year, which sounds ridiculous, but it's actually worked out really well. So for those of you who've been listening to the show for a while, you know that back in March, April, May, June, right in the first half of the year, my plan was to sell my personal residence. We've been at that point, we had already covered for a very long time, well over a year, perhaps even two, how the market was really priming itself for another downturn. And all that stuff is still true, all the things we've been talking about. And we've talked about it more recently as well. All of that stuff I consider to still be true. And I was timing it to do it this year because, in my estimation, I believed that one of those many potential dominoes that could really screw up the economy and cause a downturn, I predicted was going to happen, or we would look back and say that was the beginning of the downturn in October of 2017. And as a side note, I must be the only person who does this kind of stuff that constantly brings up the biggest error in predictions that I've had. And that was October. October was my biggest error, hands down. I predicted it. We would look back and see it as the month when things went nuts. Instead, what we got was the most calm stock market October on record forever. And the whole time the stock market has existed, or at least as long as they've kept those kinds of records. Very stable, very flat. And October is usually the month when we see weird stuff happening. If you want to make a bet that weird crap is going to happen in the stock market, there's going to be huge fluctuations. If you bet it's going to happen in October and you look back at history, odds are you would win that bet. Not this year. So I was as far from being right as possible in my estimation of what was going to happen in the stock market. Okay. Now, that doesn't change any of the facts we've talked about. We've talked about how just about all the big pundits out there talk about how the stock market is overvalued from 10 to 20%. All the other things we've talked about in terms of pensions and that being a $4 trillion bailout. And when that starts to happen, that's going to cause inflation. We've talked about other things that could cause inflation. We've talked about ridiculously stupid lending practices, or rather the ridiculously stupid way that your credit score is being kind of tinkered with in order to allow subprime borrowers to borrow again. We've talked about all that stuff. All that stuff is still true. So I don't step away from this idea that something is very likely to cause this market to go back down. The timing on my estimate, on what I thought was going to kick it off, is clearly wrong because my October thing didn't happen. So the reason I'm sharing all of this is because I was wrong about October means now that I'm going to go ahead and do this all over again, but in 2018, right about the same time in 2018, I'm actually in a much better position than I was a year ago. Now, is it a huge amount of money? Well, no. Judging by all the numbers I'm seeing, what I could have sold it for, if I do go ahead and put it on the market in, say, February, March, sell the property, April, who knows? That's the new plan. I will probably make 6 to 10% more than selling it the previous year. So that's a pretty good amount of money, right? That's $6,000 to $10,000 per $100,000 that I sell the home for. Most of you already know that in the market I am in the particular neighborhood I'm in, the average sales price is about 1.1 million. So that's pretty good. I will reap the benefits of having that amount of money increase. What's also interesting is rents have been flat. So I'm going to enjoy this increase in the amount I'm going to walk away from when the deal is done. But the amount I'm going to be paying for rent when I walk out hasn't really gone up. I'm budgeting the exact same amount for rent, and I'm still seeing myself able to get the exact same kind of homes I was looking for a year ago when I was doing this, trying to figure out what my new cash flow situation would be. And we can also do a show where I completely, since the last time we talked, I've completely reanalyzed my property from the standpoint of, should I simply move out and rent it because I'd make positive cash flow to the tune of about $800 a month. But when I do the math and calculate the utility of the money involved, in other words, if I were to pull my equity out of the house and invest it in properties elsewhere, would I make the same or more? I end up making more. My return on investment on that money ends up being higher. So that's why I'm still very much leaning towards selling. But in terms of analyzing what I'm thankful for, I guess I'm thankful for having been wrong, having had delays that were really a mixture of poor judgment on my part and an inability on the part of my contractor to get things done when I needed them done. So that's kind of a cheesy way out because it's totally a rearview mirror thing, right? I'm looking back, and it was totally a stroke of luck on my part that's kind of the way things went. If I had been right, I'd be in a little bit more trouble right now. The amount of increase in property value that I enjoyed up to October would probably now be on a downslide. So selling it in those first few months of 2018, I might have been able to sell it for about the same amount of money I could have sold it the previous year, maybe even a little bit less, depending on how fast things kind of occurred after that presumed downturn in the market that I was anticipating for October of 2017. And of course, it really having a negative effect would have been a very fast progression of bad things leading up to that. But in any event, that's not the way it worked out. I am thankful for the lessons I've learned through this. And that's another part, that's another aspect of this. It's easy to say, well, I am very thankful that I have a loving family, or I'm thankful that I have a job that is allowing me not only to live well or take care of my living expenses, but then also lets me invest, or I'm thankful for good health, all these other kinds of things. You need to be thankful for the not so good stuff. And if you aren't, you need to figure out a way to turn it into something to be thankful for. And you need to make it a learning thing. If something bad happened, what is it you can draw away from that? What's the good you can draw from it? And then you need to focus on the good that you get out of it. And this is something that you should try to carry with you throughout the year. So many people can get disappointed when they experience what they feel like is a failure. And we all have them, right? If you're so insulated that you can look back on your year and say, I've really had no failures this year. You're not taking big enough risks. You're doing something wrong. If you don't have some failures to look back on. So look back on your failures, look back on the things that you really would have rather not have had happen to you, but turn them into something you can learn from so that you're able to be thankful for the experience, because you know what? Knowledge is in many cases far more valuable than what you would have gotten from the positive outcome of what you were counting on anyway. Now, talking about taking that risk, I want to segue into something that I think is a good way for you to exercise that muscle, that do scary things muscle. It may sound a little odd at first, but I think for a lot of folks, this is a great way for you to break that glass ceiling open on a lot of your fears as it relates to taking risks. So we're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about something I've been doing to just embrace it, to embrace the risk, to embrace the craziness a little bit every now and then. And hopefully it will be a liberating thing for you. So we'll talk about it in a minute, so don't go away.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right. Aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Welcome back, everyone. We've just been talking a little bit about giving thanks for the good things in your life, and then turning the things that weren't so good, the outcomes you didn't want, turning those into things that you can be thankful for, lessons learned, things you've realized, new things that have served as a good lesson for you that you can carry with you in the future and use them to just make yourself more likely to be successful in things that you're going to be pursuing in 2018. Now, one thing I'd like to see everyone out there doing. Now, I know I have quite a few of you who are really aspiring investors. You follow what I talk about. You're building your comfort levels. And I get a lot of folks who reach out to me and talk about that. And last year around this time, I did a series. It may have been the year before. God, these years are just coming together so fast now, where we really talked about creating your goals and working through them and overcoming fears, and getting comfortable with this level of risk. And one of the big things was, think about the worst case scenario. What is the worst thing that can happen? And it's amazing what folks can be crippled by in terms of getting held back from making that offer or moving forward in that renovation or whatever it is that you want to do that you think is going to benefit you in some way. Here's the truth. For the most part, doing something is better than doing nothing. But maybe what you need, in addition to sort of trying to push yourself a little bit, is to do something that might be a little smaller in scope, but that embraces this risk-taking mentality. So let me give you an example of something that I did and see how you feel about it. I have always been an analyzing guy. For those of you who've listened to this show for a long time, that shouldn't be a surprise. I analyze the crap out of stuff. I like data. I like numbers. I like trying to extrapolate or interpret actions that have occurred to try to figure out what actions will happen next, right? What's going to happen next month because of this? We do that a lot here when we talk about interest rates, and I try to warn you that past experience has taught me never lock in your rate right after they increase the Fed, the prime rate, right? And we've been right every time that we've called it. Doesn't mean we'll be right every time, and there are different elements that feed that ability to call that correctly. And so much of that can come down to instinct. Now, let me get into something that's a little bit odd here. One thing I consider myself pretty good at doing is evaluating, measuring, and anticipating irrationality around various things. A lot of that comes from the lending stuff that we talk about on a regular basis that we just mentioned. But a lot of it is also just looking back on things that you see in the market that frequently just don't make sense. And when you start to embrace the idea of human nature in this stuff, you can suddenly start to make sense of things. Now, everything I'm about to say is just me, right? So I don't consider this me giving you investment advice. It's more about sort of embracing a potentially risky thing that could bring you rewards. So I feel like I have a pretty good handle on that stuff. So what I'm going to suggest is that figure out what you have a pretty good handle on. Are you pretty good, as I feel like I am, on estimating what kind of irrational responses you'll get from a larger number of people? Or in my case, the example I'm going to use is cryptocurrencies. And we've talked about those before. We've talked about Bitcoins Ethereum, Litecoin, very briefly. I think it was quite a while ago. Now, I had a client years ago who was purchasing a home. Excuse me, he was selling a home, and then he was going to be buying a home elsewhere out of the area. And one of his things he wanted to do, he wanted to take, when he sold this place, his place here, and bought somewhere else, he took $10,000 of that and invested it in Bitcoin. You can probably already guess where this is going. He continues to be on my holiday card list as a former client. And he reached out to me because we had a lot of conversations about Bitcoin. I'm trying to remember what year this was. It was like 2013. I don't know what it was trading for then or what it was selling for then, but I seem to recall him telling me that he paid under $100 when he bought it all, or right around $100. So, and today, as I look at the news, I see that Bitcoin hit $9,500 per Bitcoin. Okay. So 90 times what he paid, right? So if you do some quick math, if we assume it was the higher number, the $100 per Bitcoin number, his $10,000 is now worth $950,000. He tells me he hasn't sold any of his Bitcoin yet. He's still holding on to it. Here's the fun part. He doesn't plan to sell any of it. He doesn't even think he's going to think about selling it till probably middle of next year. All right, so there's that story, right? And of course, he was willing to show me how to buy Bitcoin way back then and said, dude, you should totally get in on this. This is, even if it doesn't go very far, it's going to go way farther than it is right now. Now, I'm going to suggest that whether it's Bitcoin or some other thing that you think you're pretty good at guesstimating or getting a grip on, I want you to take some amount of money you can afford to lose forever and risk it and give it a go. Because, and particularly with me, it was so easy to do with virtual currencies, right? It's so easy now to purchase virtual currencies. It's just, you commit, you click that buy button. Now, I went ahead and bought some virtual currency about a month ago, and it's doing exceptionally well, right? So I didn't buy, tons and tons of it, but I bought enough that even at the level I bought, that was a good feeling. That rush of feeling like I took a risk and it's paying off. Now, I've got theories about this. If you want to hear it, I know this is primarily a real estate show, but it's this irrationality thing. Now, no one knows, or at least my bet is, the majority of you don't know what a blockchain is, which is what makes Bitcoins and Ethereum and Litecoin and all these other things something you can supposedly trust in terms of something to base value on. Now, and most of you probably aren't aware that there's a limited number of Bitcoin. I'm trying to remember how many there are. I think it was 23 million. There's only 23 million Bitcoins that can exist supposedly in the way this is structured. Okay, so that's what gives Bitcoin its value. It's not just somebody churning out Bitcoins as they wish. It is the blockchain is mathematically set up to limit the number of Bitcoins that can exist. So it's a virtual representation of gold, right? There's only so much gold on the planet. Well, there's only so many Bitcoins on the internet, supposedly. Okay. But even though there are some people who understand that, most people do not. Here's what most people understand. Bitcoin was not long ago selling for 20 cents per coin. It's within near enough memory that people can recall it. Go Google it. Current value of Bitcoin, and you'll be stunned at how much it's increased. So here is what I know in terms of irrationality. And what's great is this irrationality isn't from mom and pops. It's not from the average people on the streets. The irrationality that you can expect is the same kind of irrationality that happens with banks and with lending institutions and all this other goofy stuff that is affected in the exact same way as your lending rate on your mortgage is affected when the Fed raises the prime lending rate. The two are not directly linked, but psychologically they will be for a little while. A certain amount of panic ensues, right? And then it goes up and then everything settles down. And in fact, in every case we've called it so far over the last 2 years, not only has it gone down, but it's gone down to lower than what it was before the Fed raised the prime rate. Okay. That's a perfect example of irrationality, right? There's no logical reason why it does that. It just does it. If you go with that theory here and realize that most of these folks who work for major investment firms aren't going to look into what a bitchain is or what a Bitcoin is and all these other wonderful things that apply to Bitcoin and Ethereum, all they're going to look at is how much it has increased in value. And and there are, in terms of the number of people invested in Bitcoin, it's a supply and demand equation. Right now, the demand is relatively low if you take into account the typical investment things, right? The stuff that you can invest in and the number of people that invest in a variety of different things. Even if you take at it from the standpoint of individual folks buying their own stocks and whatever investments, it's a low number. But what will happen when huge institutional and commercial investment houses start as a mainstream investment investing in Bitcoin or any other virtual currency? Well, demand will go through the roof, right? Now, my estimation was that we would see Bitcoin hit $10,000 per Bitcoin in January. Why? If you'll go back and Google the Forbes out there and the Bloombergs and all the other financial magazines and Google Bitcoins, you eventually discover that all of these big institutional investors are going to start getting involved in virtual currencies in terms of allowing them to be things within anybody's portfolio in January. So my feeling is that there's absolutely going to be a huge uptick in demand. And with an uptick in demand is going to be an uptick in cost per unit of Bitcoin. But it's also true of the others. So I've invested in Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. Actually, the one that has made me the most money in terms of how much it's increased has been Ethereum. Bitcoin has gone up quite a bit, but I don't think I even invested at a level where I got a single Bitcoin, right? I got a percentage of a Bitcoin with my investment. But all of it's doing exceptionally well right now. And it's a great way for you to take down that barrier, take down that fear. Because here's the deal. Let's pretend that I have $1,000 in this. And let's say it all goes up to the point where everything I'm holding is worth $10,000. Then it drops to zero and I've got nothing. Well, I didn't lose $10,000. I lost $1,000, right? I lost what was put in. So sort of embracing that and getting comfortable with that as a dynamic, I think is helpful in other things in your life. Is it hugely speculative? Is it as close as you can get to going to Las Vegas without getting on a plane or having to drive a long distance? Yeah, it is. So much of whether or not this stuff succeeds or fails rests with some of this stuff that we've been talking about. And to be honest with you, we still have to understand that this is a man-made thing. And I have a hard time believing that either some very smart programmer or some very smart AI that gets put together specifically to break blockchains doesn't at some point figure out a way to create fake Bitcoins or how to counterfeit Bitcoins. I think it's inevitable, and I think we'll discover that, hey, you know what? Basing a medium of exchange on something that is like this, that can simply be printed up or created, is a bad thing. But also keep in mind that that's what your dollars are, right? Your dollars, the reason why people think Bitcoin is potentially risky is the same reason that you should feel like your dollars are risky. And that's a whole other conversation. Currencies in general are creepy. Fiat currencies that are not based on anything of any real value, are absolutely creepy because they are simply values based on the faith and credit of the country that underwrites them. At least Bitcoin has a digital scarcity, right? If there's programmed in a limit to the number of them that there can be, and assuming nobody or no thing figures out some programmatic way to counterfeit them, you're fine. But as soon as someone does, and here's the thing, every country on the planet that has a computer science program of any kind, or a spy-based computer science program, or a hacking program, you can bet they are burning the midnight oil to try to figure out how to counterfeit this stuff. And then when they do figure it out, they're gonna time everything perfectly to cause the biggest amount of grief and the greatest amount of profit for themselves, and take advantage of that. So I have a number in my head that I'm going to hold on to this stuff to. I've only put in money I'm 100% willing to say goodbye to. I thought instead of driving to Vegas and spending a couple of days getting drunk and doing stupid things with my money, I figured I'd throw it into something that might just make me a little money. Think of it the same way. Save yourself the plane fare, save yourself the hotel, whatever the gas money would take you to get there. And look at it that way, and look at it as a way for you to take some risk, to raise the bar on your risk aversion, so that when you next see that perfect house as an investment, or that perfect duplex, or whatever, or you find an opportunity or something presents itself to you that you should take advantage of, maybe you've knocked down those walls a little bit so that you will actually jump in and do it. I want everyone to get to the point where if you can feel comfortable with something as loony as Bitcoins, right? And then you're faced with something where you're able to put together a lot of numbers and get good data to really shore up the idea that you're making a reasonable and good decision in order to invest and grow. Well, that'll just make that 10 times easier, because this whole Bitcoin thing is a little bit nuts, a lot less nuts, or a lot more nuts than what you would be doing in real estate. And I think it would be a great place to start. And you can start off with $100 and go out there, get involved, and use it as a tool. Think of it as paying for a class on how to feel more comfortable with risk. See? Easy. All right, folks. I absolutely appreciate you taking the time to listen to me on these subjects. I hope this is valuable stuff for you as we move through the end of 2017 and into the new year. I'm hoping to turn the page on the show. I really want to kind of come out of the gate running in the new year and deliver more, better, faster to all of you who've taken the time, who've invested your time with me on the show, which I absolutely appreciate. And with every show, the goal is to leave more value on the table. And I just want to double down on that in 2018 and give you even more value for every minute that you spend with me. Thanks again for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.